and you can go ahead, Kathy.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today is the March 11th meeting of JCPC. And seeing that we have a quorum, I will, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, we definitely have a quorum. I'm calling the meeting to order at 4:01 p.m. My first order of business is to make sure all the committee members can hear and we can hear you. So I'll just read out your names and let me know if all is well. Lee,
Yes.
Eugene,
All is well.
Jill.
Yes, yep.
And Andy Churchill, there is a very
Yes.
compliant committee member. And I'm turning it over to Sean. I think people know the order that we're doing. Bridget Hines said she couldn't join us until 5 o'clock today, and Deb sent a note today that she might not be able to join at all because of multiple things going on in her world with the schools and her family. So one person will be joining late, and I think we're otherwise ready to go, Sean.
Yeah, thank you. So the plan is that we will start with recreation, and Ray Harp is here, who is the director of Amherst Recreation. I'm going to try to bring him in now. And then he just has one project request. Then we're going to shift to town information technology, and our director Sean Hannon is here, and he'll speak to. There were two requests. I think after talking, some of the conversation with this group, this committee earlier, and looking at those requests, we are likely going to retract one of them, and we can explain what that is and why. And then hopefully it'll be almost 5 o'clock. But if it's not, we will look at some of the questions that have been submitted and just review what those questions are. I have some answers to some of them, but a lot of them are I'll have before next week. And then at 5 o'clock, we will start promptly with the schools. Shannon Bernaccia, the director of finance for the schools, is here, and Michael Gallo O'Connell, who's director of facilities, is here as well. And then
Okay.
Shannon can let us know if Jerry will be here, director of IT.
So I'm just double checking. Lee, I think you're taking minutes today, correct? Okay, so I'll just confirm and I'll send you a couple models. We have several at this point.
Thank you.
Okay, I think I think Ray, you're on.
Hello, everybody, and thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Um, uh, so I think that ours is pretty straightforward this year. Thank you for having me. Um, we're requesting a 40,000. We're requesting $40,000 for the purchase of a used fairway mower. Um, this machine would be that's for Cherry Hill. This machine would be replacing a mower that was purchased new in 2012 with an estimated lifespan of 10 years back then. It currently has 3,500 hours on it, which is the equivalent of 211,000 miles. Uh, this replaces a request in the queue from last year of 83,000, which was for a brand new machine. Um, Current estimates on a new machine now run close to $100,000. The request for this machine has already been pushed out several times, including most recently last year when the irrigation controller uh, prices that we had took immediate priority over that mower. I would not, as the director, feel comfortable pushing the request out again beyond this year. Um, the question, I mean, I think that uh, in terms of what we're asking here, it could be our conversation might uh, end up moving towards used or new. We did adjust to that new to the I mean sorry we did adjust to the used mower uh, uh, over the course of the last year because that was the direction that we thought that JCPC was asking us to go for some of our other mowers. We do know right now that um, that the higher price for the new mower does give us uh, potentially 10 to 15 years on a new mower as opposed to anywhere from 5 to 8 years on a used. But we did submit for 40,000 in the capital request for a used mower.
Uh, Questions from the committee? Um, Andy.
Hi, Ray. I guess I'm just curious about
if you're saying you could go either way with the new or used, but if we approve 40,000, you're going to be pretty much going in the direction of used, right?
Yes, our preference would certainly be on a new machine. We had it in our queue for a new machine. It certainly has escalated in value since our quote. Um, uh, we were asked last year to look for our purchase last year or the year before. We adjusted to a used vehicle because there was some concern that we could probably find a value that allowed us to spread capital money in other places. We would certainly prefer a new one, and I wouldn't have brought it up if it wasn't. I I I sort of feel like it should be mentioned what that cost would be for the new machine.
I see.
Uh,
Jean?
Follow up on that?
Jean and then Jill. Yeah.
Hi, Ray.
Or Andy, if you want to follow up, sure. Yeah.
Just to follow up, there is a committee now that's looking at the future of Cherry Hill, and is there a chance that we wouldn't potentially need a mower for 10 years? I don't know how to frame that question, but
I think I know the question. The committee is looking for ways to provide to evaluate all of the options at Cherry Hill. That Cherry Hill Working Group is looking for an opportunity. If we were to go and sell golf operations to somebody else, or if we were looking to change our budget demands for the course, ask for more from our operating budget, asking to put more in, it's still our in order to operate the course as it is right now, this is an important long-term investment, and it would then be part of our evaluation of the course as we look to move in any direction that we went in. We know that in order to operate the course, we need to have the vehicle. It's not a small piece of equipment for the course. We know that we need to have that vehicle in order to operate going long term, going short term or long term. We need to find a way to get that vehicle taken care of. But it doesn't hurt our ability long term to move in any direction that working group moves us.
Jean and then Jill.
Hi, Ray. Just a question on the used mower. How many miles would the used mower have, and is it just a straight used mower? Has it been are they typically reconditioned? Can you expect to get the 3,500 hours out of a used one total?
This is only the second time that we've looked at used mowers. I don't know how thorough the process is there and how the bidding process is there. I believe that we know that we have a relationship with the Toro dealer that we have here, and that's where that's usually the first place we go to for quotes. It would depend on availability, I'm sure, like the used car market. I mean, it would depend on availability and how many miles are on it and how much lifetime it's expected. We wouldn't want to throw $40,000 in a bad direction, of course, and we would. Myself and my superintendent would be looking to try and find a vehicle that does provide us with what we're looking for. But it's I think it's dependent on what the market has there.
And are you guys confident that you can get a mower of the quality that you're looking for, or is that
I would not say confident. I would say that there's stuff available. I would say that there are mowers available at 40, and that's the reason why I wanted to bring back in the new cost. But I think that if we were to say we're confident that this equipment is not something that everybody's looking to give up. Right. It's not something that there's not a huge market out there for used golf equipment. We would shop for the best value, but I don't know how many vehicles are available. The quote was gathered from my superintendent. It was gathered from my superintendent from Toro and other dealers that potentially would have equipment available. The things that they were looking at when we originally went to them might be their market might have changed also for all I know. We did look recently at what that new market is, and it's closer to 100,000 it is to the 90,000 that we were quoted on a couple months ago.
Cool. Thank you.
Jill?
My question was answered. Thanks.
Okay, Andy, I'll just give you a little bit more on the working group. So far, if you either attend their meetings or read them up, they're actively working on keeping the course alive. So they're talking about how potentially to improve it, to improve the revenue stream on it. Is it a revolving fund? But it's protected land, so it has to be used for recreation. So it's not potentially buildable, like for housing. And I don't know the selection of the people who are on that golf committee. I know, Sean, you were there one day on it, but these are people who are actively thinking of it as the course itself for golf is a resource, but it's also a resource for the town, for sledding, for track, for field, which because it's mowed. So I think 5 to 8 years or 10 years, it's going to still be with us, in terms of the longevity. I just wanted to, since I have been following it.
I thank you, Kathy, for that. I mean, I don't want to speak for the members of the committee,
Yeah.
but I would concur. I think that Kathy's spot on what the energy and the sentiment is of that working group.
Yeah.
There's more to cover with the working group, but the energy has been in looking to try and make it an Amherst asset, to maintain it as an Amherst asset.
And just for others, one of the things that has been discussed is it is actually making money. Not a lot of money, but revenues are at or above expenses. It's not the money loser it was when we bought it. Those of us who remember when we bought it. And so Lee Edwards.
Yeah, this will reflect my complete ignorance of this matter, but is the technology for golf course mowers shifting and improving, becoming more environmentally friendly in the way that automobiles are?
I can say a tentative no. I'm not incredibly well versed in all the different options that are there. We have been looking for environmentally friendly options, and they don't exist on the used market for us. And we certainly can try to adjust numbers to see what is available for new. There some of our if we're looking at our long-term queue, our 5-year projected queue for capital, we know that we have 2 green initiatives that are really big for us in the next 5 years. One of them being a conversion of our cart fleet over to electric, which saves us a little bit in terms of our it saves us a little bit in terms of our footprint there, but then we also are we introduced last year a conversion of our pump house over from diesel, which is a bigger imprint. I think that's a bigger footprint for us to try and manage. Yes, our machine. We know that our machinery is we guzzle a little bit, and we've made a bunch of attempts to try and address that in the last couple of years.
Thanks.
Well, I'm not seeing any other questions, so thank you, Ray. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Sean Hannon.
Hello.
You're up.
All right. Good afternoon. So you want me to just run through the capital requests? So the first one is the bigger of the two, and it's a request for $200,000, and that's our IT infrastructure. We ask for infrastructure money every year. It fluctuates a little bit, but this is our scheduled replacement of essentially all the IT equipment you see. So laptops, PCs, those are the big items, or the items we buy most of. And then it's also in this category, we have our servers, our wireless access points, And one of the reasons this year is a little higher than other years is we're about 10 years into a lot of our network switches. Our network switches are what connect all our buildings together, and then within the buildings connect all the network devices, phones, PCs, building controls, that kind of stuff. And this starts us down the path of replacing a lot of the switches that are 10 years old. So I don't know if we want
So
to talk about both of them, or if we want to talk
why
about
don't
this
you
one.
why don't you do both of them and then we'll take questions on, yeah.
Yeah. So the other one's not in the packet, and that's our we use CrowdStrike, but it's our EDR, enterprise trying to blank on the response, and it's a fancy version of antivirus and more, and so it's what protects all our devices. We have about 450 devices on it that run CrowdStrike. That it's software and a service that looks out for potential threats, and then it also protects identities. So on our Microsoft 365, our hosted email, the logins from that, it protects us on that. It looks for anomalies and who logged in, when, and where, and flags things, and it alerts us to things. And it also provides us with our incident response plan that's required for insurance, as well as it's a question we get asked by the auditors, we get asked by the state, and it gives us something that if we were under some sort of cyber threat, it would help us. It protects us from that, but then it also helps us recover from that if it gets further than it should.
And you just say it's not on the list for this year, but it was on your list, or?
Sean, can I speak to that real quick?
Yeah.
So Kathy, sorry, I had to step away for a second. So that's the one that was on the list. So if you look in the plan, I believe it's on the plan.
Okay.
And talking with Sean, so that one was I didn't have a project write up at this when I had to put together the preliminary plan, but it was on there last year. So talking with Sean about what it is, and as he mentioned, it is vitally important, but it's really more of a recurring operating cost for software. It's not a new software. It's not something new. So what we're proposing is that we will pull that off. It is important, and Paul and I and Sean are gonna have to figure out how we build that into the operating budget, because it's something that we need, but in understanding it more, it shouldn't be on the capital plan. So
Okay,
so that'll give you $75,000 more available than what's showing there currently.
You anticipated the question, so and you'll figure out somehow that 75 is now in an operating budget, so IT still has
So
it.
when we're building our operating budgets this year, that's we have to look at how it's a large number, but again, it's something we have to do. So we've got to figure out where that will fit in.
Yeah. And I guess the one thing I would add, part of the reason there was some confusion is several years ago, prior to when Sean left and came back, several years ago when we were working on the capital plans, we put something in there as a placeholder, not knowing what we would need, and then it kind of worked out that this was a year it came due, and we needed that renewal. But obviously, it makes more sense in the operating budget, because it will be something we're gonna unfortunately have to ask for gonna have to be in every year's operating budget, unfortunately.
So question. So I guess, so I understand we actually have one proposal, the 200,000, and the other is moved onto an operating budget that will be more invisible to us when we see it. It will just be IT, and you will explain it in May.
Yeah. Happy to answer the same question then.
Okay, so questions? Andy? You're muted.
I'm not sure if I'm looking at the right thing, but in the capital plan, the draft capital plan for FY27, there's also $100,000 for fuel tracking software. Is that in somebody else's?
Yeah, that was the one Guilford spoke to.
That was
Okay.
Because it's software, it lives in the IT section, but that was the project that Guilford spoke to when he
Okay.
came.
So I have a question that is a crossover to schools, Sean. So you're not necessarily going to be able to answer it.
Shannon's here too, so
Okay, Shannon's here. So the question that has come up a few times, is there any efficiency to be gained if, at least at the elementary school level, if IT was across the town for our schools and for the town, as opposed to you've got an IT department, the schools have an IT department. So I don't know, Sean, I don't know, and I guess, are there any efficiencies either in the way we buy equipment, or, the software we're buying, licensing? So, and are there any efficiencies in staffing? So that it's a question that's come up, and I've thought of it more as maybe when we're buying, but I know the schools also buy when they're replacing laptop. Our elementary, they buy them in bulk. So, we do purchasing. So that's Jill, did I capture that as a generic question of, Northampton kind of shares those services and they don't have a regional school, so they have a different
Yeah.
way of doing it. So it was a question on the capital side, licensing, fiber optics, and various. So, and I don't know whether this is the right place to be asking that question either.
Sean, I
Yeah.
can say quickly, I think, and then I'll
Yeah.
turn it over to you. I think the regional school piece is probably the biggest difference between us and Northampton because the regional schools, again, is a legally separate entity, which Sean doesn't have any responsibility for. But Sean, pretending that the regional schools didn't exist, what do you think in terms of knowing what, the staffing and kind of the scope of responsibility for Jerry and what he does?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly something that could be looked at some more. If you look across the state, it's going to meeting with other IT directors. It's roughly 50-50 whether it's city or town separate from schools or whether it's combined. There are a number of things that we are kind of either combined or collaborate pretty heavily on already. So one of them is the fiber, so that the town installed and maintains the fiber for all the schools. So there's no redundancy or overlap there. On the software side, the financial system, Munis, is shared between the town and the schools. And then we town and the schools work pretty collaboratively on different things. When we need something, they need something.
And
So there
Sean, real
is,
quick, the Munis one
yeah,
is a huge cost savings
yeah,
to the system. If I think we pay what about 120,000 is
yeah.
for the software for all of
Hmm.
us, and if particularly if the region had to buy their own and they bought that software, they would probably be paying close to that on their own. Maybe a little bit less. There are probably some modules that the region wouldn't need.
Hmm.
Um, but and I only say that because in Holyoke we had a complicated system where the schools had its own munis and the town had its own munis, and we each paid separately for our own munises. And one of the things I want to do was bring them all together into one system. And it's a good thing that we're all on one system and have one kind of one package together.
Yeah. So we do share there. I think there's, it's worth looking at what else we could share on. The purchasing, I don't know how much we would see a discount. Most of what we buy off the state contract, and so we're already kind of taking advantage of whatever pricing the state has negotiated at that scale. So I don't know how much we would save there, but
Okay.
certainly could look at
Yeah. I think the biggest
more.
benefit, Kathy, would be some resiliency too. Like when knowing the staffing on both sides, like they are stretched thin on both sides, and the software is very like the software that they become experts in is very unique. So like the softwares that the school use, town staff are not, don't have the bandwidth to learn those softwares, and the same kind of vice versa. But if it was one big group, there might be some improved resiliency where there could be some maybe cross-training overlap if somebody leaves.
Yeah.
So there definitely could be some benefits. It might be something to study down the road. But in the future, but I don't think like from a body perspective, I think staffing wise, both are very busy all the time.
Okay. Thank you. I mean, that was an extremely thorough answer. So thank you very much.
We've got a half hour to get through, Kathy,
No,
before
and
5 o'clock.
no,
So
I know.
we're going to answer these questions as thorough as possible.
I have one more on software, Lee, before I forget it, if you don't mind. Last year, we authorized the purchase of some software that was specifically for finance to do things differently than whatever you can do with Munis.
Yeah.
And it was for the no longer with us finance director. Is that money ever going to be spent, or could that be brought back in? So I think it was Sean, you'll know, it was like in the 150.
Yeah. No, it was 100,000. So my expectation for those funds, Kathy, is we talked about on that finance committee having a conversation about the budget and how the budget looks and the process for the budget. And that money, my understanding is it was basically to buy expensive budget software, and to streamline the creation of the budget process. So I've sat through a lot of those presentations over the years, and I've never been a huge fan of spending money on those types of budget softwares, but I kind of want to wait and hear what the conversation is at Finance Committee about things we want to see in the budget in the future, the way it's developed, because maybe that will indicate that maybe we should explore it more or not. But I am not in a rush to spend that money, and if the conversation with the committee is that it's not a good decision to do that or it's not a pressing need, then I would turn it back, probably the next round of JCPC.
Okay, thank you. Lee.
Once again, total ignorance. What does MUNIS stand for? Municipal United?
Yeah, it doesn't stand for. I mean, it just that's the name of the software is Munis, but it's municipal finance software.
Okay. Thank
It
you.
is in all caps, so you would think that it would stand for something, but yeah.
And Lee, it's what they use for billing, and it's for billing and for reporting. So when we're getting a quarterly report, when you're the procurement, it gets some. This is DPW versus this is someone else.
It's everything. It's payroll, it's accounts payable, it's accounting, budget, billing, as you mentioned, Kathy, for water, sewer, and all property taxes, everything. Pretty much everything goes through Munis, so it's pretty vital.
No, and when you pay your taxes, if you pay them online, it's Munis. I mean, it's collecting that information from you. But
and we'll have been on it 30 years this year. So, in case anybody's wondering.
So, and different departments, I think DPW has periodically says it can't do some things they would like it to be able to do. Not easily, anyway. Andy. You're muted.
Yep. Just wondering, we've been on Munis for 30 years. I assume switching to another system would be a transition nightmare, but is it still meeting our needs?
I'll speak from my perspective, and Sean, if you want to jump on. Yes, it's not perfect, but it does the core functions really well. There's not a lot of competitors, honestly, for municipal accounting softwares in Massachusetts for large communities. I haven't really heard of any large communities on a different software. And if you're smaller, there's some alternatives, but for software our size or a city our size, I haven't heard of a lot of real viable alternatives. That being said, there are a couple companies that are starting to get into the business. OpenGov is one that we use a lot for permitting, and it's been great. It's been probably in terms of efficiency gains from adding a software. We've talked about consultants, and sometimes you don't get what you want from consultants. That's true with software sometimes, but OpenGov, I would say, is like the best investment we've made. It's helped multiple different departments. It streamlines paperwork and tracks everything. And so they're actually getting into creating like an ERP system. And so we might explore to see what it looks like. But there aren't a lot of alternatives, unfortunately, really and it's a huge undertaking, right? To ever transition from this system to something else. and it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I only know that because, and again, in Holyoke, when we were looking at merging the two, just the price to merge the two, and it's the same system, was going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars to get the information out of one and put it in the other one. So
Yeah, and then the ongoing costs would get pretty high. Where we technically own Munis that we are running. We do pay for support, and it's not expensive. It is $120,000 a year. But if you were to compare that to a lot of other communities and what we pay, it's 120,000 shouldn't sound like a bargain, but it really is.
yeah, because it's supporting again three districts,
Yeah.
three entities, pretty significantly.
I think that's it. So Sean, we don't need to keep you more.
Okay.
You're welcome to stay. And I see that both Mike and
Thank
Shannon have, and thank you, by the way, thank you. I shouldn't.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And
Thanks.
thank you for what you do to make our lives easy. So Sean, you suggested we could turn to some questions that we've submitted to you. One of them, I know I submitted on the 3 years old or older and not closed down.
Yeah.
There was a long list for schools. So maybe if we started with that before Bridget can join us, just getting some sense. And I added them up. I don't know whether people looked at that, but that was more than 3 years old. And when I added up the schools, it added up to over 1 million is the only reason I'm asking
Yeah.
about it. Not on any one line item, lots of pieces.
Yeah, I don't have updates. I was planning on for next
Okay.
week. I don't have updates on the town side. I know Shannon and I spoke, and one of her projects that she's going to speak to in a little while, I believe, kind of looks at that too. It's looking at how to, the needs of the facilities going forward, the funds that we have available, and what additional funds are needed. So Shannon can speak more to that piece of it. So yeah, we can do that now. I also have some other questions. There were some unrelated questions to schools that I've got responses to. I can go through whatever you want to do.
So why don't we do the unrelated? Because I would not want to start. Bridget really asked that Shannon and Mike and Jerry, if you don't mind, Bridget Hines had asked that we hold school discussion till she got here, and she said she'd be here at 5. So why don't we do the
Okay.
others that you have either responses to or not?
All right. So there's a wide array. So some folks have been sending me questions. I'm putting them all in a Word document, and then I've sent them all out to department heads. And so these are the ones that I have responses to so far, and the rest I should have responses to next week. So hopefully you see a pie chart on your screen. One of the questions that we received early on was, what would the pie chart look like if it included debt payments? So the pie chart that's in the capital improvement program is really just based on the projects being requested for FY27. It doesn't factor in debt payments for projects that have been approved from borrowing in the past. So there was a request of what would that pie chart look like if we were to factor in sort of more of like a cash flow look at this pie chart, like the dollars going out the door in FY27 and what departments they relate to. So this is the updated chart. The schools, as we would expect, is a bigger slice because now it includes the debt exclusion for the elementary school, which is a relatively large payment. Public Works is still one of the bigger groups. And this says Public Works. I shouldn't say Tree and Grounds. That must just be a label I gotta fix. It's just all of Public Works. Library, again, a bigger piece now because it's including the anticipated debt for the Jones Library for FY27. So that becomes a bigger slice as well. And I'll just keep going. Raise your hand if you have any questions or follow-ups.
Andy, and I don't know whether people remember, but the original one, because Chapter 90 was in it, had half of it around half being DPW. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I was just, if you put I guess I'm trying to figure out.
This does include Chapter 90 now.
This
So
includes
this includes everything
as well. It's not just the.
So I think of the other one like pie chart of budgeted projects for FY27, and this is really a pie chart of cash out the door anticipated for FY27 based on both the projects that are budgeted, but also any debt.
And any grants that we're getting,
Yeah.
like Chapter 90 or whatever.
Yeah, what's not included is if we propose a project to be funded through a borrowing next year, and really the only one is Crocker Farm. So like Crocker Farm is not in here for the playground because we wouldn't anticipate having the expenses for that project until a future year. So like the 175,000 for the Crocker Farm playground isn't in this chart yet, in this kind of snapshot view of it.
And,
But,
and
but everything else is in there.
Are roads included in the public works then? If
Yeah.
the Chapter 90 funding for roads would be in that category?
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
Thank you.
All right, the next request was to add North Amherst Library to the maintenance chart, so that'll be done. So we'll give you an updated capital improvement program maybe for next week since we've made some tweaks to it, and that'll have North Amherst Library in there. We moved Chapter 90 under state aid in the summary chart before it was lumped in under other, I believe. So now you'll see that broken out separately. I'm going to stop sharing so I can share a different document. The next request was for trends in, there were two different requests. One's for trends in kind of fuel usage and one on maintenance usage. And so I pulled those numbers and I'll attach this to the, you'll get these answers in sheets next week. Can you see the number, the chart on the screen? So what this is a printout from our Munis accounting system that we just spoke about. And we have what we call an object for vehicle maintenance, and we have a couple different objects for diesel fuel and gasoline for vehicles. And so that allows us to kind of get down to the questions that you've asked. So the account number, that's the account number that we pay from, the location, so you have a sense of what department it is, and these are all vehicle maintenance expenses here. And so what we see is that from FY23 through FY25, vehicle maintenance has sort of steadily risen, sort of what we've expected. Some of that might be just inflation and the cost going up, but some of it's probably our vehicles having more wear and tear, aging, and what we've spent so far in FY26, which in FY26 seems like we're probably on pace to be a little bit less than FY25 or around that mark.
That's a really interesting chart.
Yeah, no, it's interesting
Yeah.
to see where it is. Like fire, as you'd expect, is a big one, right? They have the largest trucks, ambulances, and things like that that require pretty expensive repairs, and we don't have much choice. And really, we try some departments, mostly public works. You'll see lower costs here because we have a maintenance department and we have mechanics. So a lot of the public works vehicles can be fixed internally, or the smaller expenses can be fixed internally. But like on fire and ambulances, they can't really work on those vehicles because they're a little bit more specialized.
And these are all built into operating budgets, correct?
Yeah, either operating budgets, they're all operating budgets, and this includes the schools too at the bottom. You'll see just the elementary schools only. And enterprise funds as well. So if it's a vehicle that
Right.
belongs to wastewater, or solid waste or so on, you'll see that there. Similarly, there was a request to look at fuel. And so we have two fuel lines. We have a gasoline fuel and a diesel fuel. And so you'll see sort of a similar breakdown. And it does kind of reinforce what we were hoping would be the case and thought would be the case, which is fuel costs have been sort of trending down, which makes sense with adding all these hybrids and more fuel efficient technology into our vehicles. And so you'll see we've dropped big chunk from FY23 to FY24, then a little bit, still drop, but a little bit less. Some of that again could be fuel prices, right? That's going to impact this if fuel prices go up or down. So it's a little more, we don't have gallons necessarily. If we buy that software, we might, that software that Guilford presented, we might have better actual gallon consumed data. But on a just pure cost perspective, we have seen it start to go down. And in particular, if you look at fire and police, which are the two departments where we've done a lot of investment in more efficient technology, you'll see that's where a lot of the decrease comes from.
If you look at the very bottom, it's a really big difference from 23.
Yeah, no, that was, yeah.
It's $100,000 less. Yeah. Andy.
Seed, tree, and grounds in and wastewater and water. Is that all, is there any other separate public works?
Yeah, so the facilities that are the ones that are public works are equipment maintenance is a public works, and that one a lot of vehicles kind of are part of that because that's the mechanics. So you'll see that is a public works. Solid waste is an enterprise fund, but overseen by public works. Wastewater and water again are enterprise funds, but overseen by public works. And tree and grounds. Yep, those are
What about
the.
like snow plows and things like that?
So most of the snow plows would be in the um, either tree and grounds or the equipment maintenance section.
And because the snow plows are on a vehicle, as they're up higher. We only have a few, I think, which are click just plows, but interesting. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
I don't know how you're going to incorporate this into the larger thing, but it's a good set of table for us to have, maybe just even as appendix, if you can keep tracking it over time.
Yeah, we can, and we can run that, that could be maybe a new report or addition, yeah, to the, maybe that's a more useful chart than what's in there currently, or if we want to add it.
And, one of the questions, Bridget raised it last year, and we started to raise it again this year on a vehicle replacement policy, like at what point do the repairs on the vehicle get to be such a high share of the cost of the vehicle, it's time to replace it? And these kinds of maintenance numbers per vehicle would help you track that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a way of, so it's not just once it's 100,000 miles, it's no good anymore, but something more concrete about what's the condition of the vehicle.
Yep.
Since many of us are driving cars with a lot more miles on that than that. Yeah.
All right, I've got one more that I think you'll find interesting. Do you want one more?
Sure.
So the another request was for road spending from different sources and what we've spent on roads from a bunch of different or not a bunch, but a few different sources. So what you'll see on the screen, I apologize if it's small, but again, you'll get this, is general fund. So these are at the top, these are appropriations either through JCPC and the annual capital process or supplemental appropriations like the one the council just did. So that's typically where these come from. The next section is Chapter 90, and then the last section is sidewalks. And what we do is kind of go through, again, we have an object, 586 or 589, that is where we charge road cost to, sidewalks, same object. And so we can go in pretty quickly and see how much we actually spent. So this is the actual money out the door in these fiscal years. And so it ebbs and flows. Sometimes if there's an appropriation for roads in one year, it might be bundled and not spent till the following year. It could be bundled and spent the year after that. So it kind of ebbs and flows a little bit. And this does include over here on the right, I tried to show like what's left over. Now, what's shown here is remaining might be encumbered, and most of these older projects, when you look at these older ones that are from 21, 22, they are encumbered. So that means they're on a contract to be spent. So they're probably going to be spent this spring. But the new one that the council just appropriated last night, I added as well. So you'll see the 2.7 million that not last night, Monday, that the council appropriated. So roughly what will go out the door at some point with the funds we have available in the next 12 months, I would say, is about 4.9 million. Or again, the timing might vary a little bit.
And that's off of town money. And then when you go down, or you do, and then the
Yep, so that's town. Then we have the Chapter 90 money. And so the thing to remember with Chapter 90 is that the way it works is, we get an allocation, but then we have to submit a project request to the state and they have to approve the project. And when they approve it, that's when we create the budget. So you'll see these numbers, Kathy, these are really based on the projects that have been approved, and then they get set up with a budget. So for example, you won't see the 26 money in here yet. I think we're just submitting that request now. So there's what's not shown here that we would see shortly is about 1.4 million from the FY26 money, that once that gets an approved project, that'll get brought in here as a budget and planned to be spent. So there's another 1.4 million or so that we would see come in here. And then sidewalks, I think last year JCPC didn't do any sidewalks. I think you either shifted that or took it off. So there's,
I think we had 140, but it may not have gotten spent.
I thought, take a look. When I looked at the Cal plan, it looked like it was removed, or maybe
Okay.
it was just merged, but I didn't see anything for
Okay.
sidewalks. So, and then at the bottom, here's the grand total, and then I did a 5-year average just so you can see kind of how it's evolving. So, we were in the $1 million range, million plus, 1.4 in FY15, dropped down a little bit. We had a little bit of a down period, which is what we saw. We saw there was a period of time where the investment in roads kind of dropped, and then around FY18, 19, it started to go back up, and it started to climb back up, so that our sort of average spent per year is now up over 2 million, which we know that that's the number we're trying to get up and do even more per year, but we're in a better place now than we were, I'd say, 10 years ago.
Andy.
So can you scroll up a little bit, Sean?
Yep.
Just looking at that, when you say there's 4.9, almost 5 million available to be spent for the general fund, and then you said there's 1.4 that's coming from Chapter 90.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? So we're talking about almost $6.5 million that we can put into roads in the coming year.
Yeah, and again, some of that might be for contracts already in place that'll be done this spring. But yeah, no, the funds we have available between what was just appropriated and what's left over on prior allocations is in that ballpark.
And just I want to build on what Andy just said, because I've been tracking the Chapter 90 monies, the columns you've got for 25 and 24, where 24 is blank. We did get an allocation there, but it looks like we just haven't spent it yet. Is that
No,
it?
again, it's so like when you see the money go in there, it's based on when the projects get approved. So like the $1 million spent, the allocation wasn't $1 million, but sometimes the project that gets approved might be a couple different years worth of allocations. So because none of our allocations were exactly $1 million, right? So it's sometimes they get bundled from multiple years together in the project that gets submitted.
And so does that mean in 24, FY24, we didn't submit any? So it's
No, it doesn't mean we didn't submit any, but it didn't get spent until, well, it might not have got spent till 25 or 26.
Okay, I'm not sure completely, because so the state puts out a Chapter 90. It's now they finally combined them, but it's two pieces. Just so people know, it's got a allocation for Amherst out of general for Chapter 90. Then there's a separate one that's coming out of fair share, and that's bumped us up from what used to be 800,000 every year.
Yeah. So I think to your question, for whatever reason, no money was spent in FY24 from Chapter 90.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know if that's because there was a backlog or it got rolled into 25. But again, if what you're looking at in the allocation sheet, that's the funds available, and this is more when did that money actually go out the door and get paid to contractors?
Because thank you, you answered. So I guess the question, and you don't need to answer it just for us, but it's do we have the capacity to move the amount of money we're getting each year? Is it a staffing issue because I think we go out to bid for this and we're competing with the state and other people for the road contractors, but just, is it the money is potentially on the table, but we're not getting it in, and can we go back and get the 24 money that we could have had if we haven't asked for it yet?
Yeah, we've spent all the money that's I asked about it today to my staff that we're pretty caught up. But yeah, you can go back years and use those funds for part of your projects. The state, if you don't use it after so many years, the state starts to nudge you to spend it, but we're caught up, I believe.
Andy.
So is there an issue with the fiscal year turning over July 1st? So, if you start working on the roads in May and June, that's 1 year, and then the next year starts, and
these are all capital funds, so they can flow across years. It doesn't like close out or anything like that. So Public Works and Guilford, they're going to start getting ready to bid out now because they just got the appropriation from the council. So they'll put out a bid that reflects the money that was just appropriated. Anything, if there are any pieces left over from other years, they'll incorporate that. And then if there's any projects that have been approved or that they're planning to go through Chapter 90, they could incorporate that as well. So they're working on that bid. They've got some work done, but I think they're starting to fine tune that.
No, and some, the same way I think for some reason, I can remember the ones, how much we've allocated, but last year we got up to 750 and if you look at it, we haven't spent it all yet, just out of the town share, for this year. So we don't necessarily, so some of what Sean has got is remaining is that Guilford can package all of that money too, or it might already be allocated, it's just not spent yet.
Yeah, again, when he bids out, there's a spring and a fall and a spring, right? So a lot of that remaining for the general fund is encumbered already, meaning it'll be queued up this spring.
Thank you
Yep.
a lot for that. So I had one question that I didn't send you, Sean, but when I was looking at Jill's minutes, which were excellent for the meeting that Andy chaired when Guilford was with us, have we already appropriated the money? He had put on $500,000 for the feasibility or the thing, and I think you said we already had that money. Did we at some point actually appropriated that money? Yes?
Yeah, so the money is already appropriated. It's a borrowing authorization. So 1.95 million was appropriated 4 or 5 years ago. I wasn't here for this, but some money was borrowed. About $500,000 was borrowed, I think, in anticipation of the project moving and getting some costs and having costs. For whatever reason, we didn't have the costs, and then we paid off that borrowing. So what that means is we have $500,000 that we don't have to go out to borrow that's available to be spent on that project. So we have $500,000 available, and then there's additional borrowing authorization for about 1.4 beyond that 500,000. So my comments were, we have what we need to get started, and then I think the next time that project comes back to council, it'll be potentially for the full authorization for a project.
We won't be seeing a separate feasibility fine. That one is somehow in the works already.
The hope is that the money we have appropriated can get us to the point where we have a cost estimate for a schematic, design cost estimate for the full project, and then we would bring that back. The designer and the OPM will do the work up to a certain point, and then there'll be a pause where that then gets considered by the council. Sort of how like the MSBA projects work. We appropriate money for a piece of it, they go out and they do their work. They come back with a bigger, the full cost estimate for the project, and then that comes back to the council.
Okay. So that was, Jill, I was just going to fix that one because I remembered that we had done this authorization and Guilford seemed to be asking for the money again. And it wasn't that he needed to get the money now to get the project started. The team has the money. Yeah. Andy.
Just what project are we talking about?
Yeah, DPW building.
Okay.
No, way back when we were still searching for where to put it, the building, we authorized the beginning money that once we made that decision, we could move toward design so that we could design a building, that it wouldn't then have to come at the last minute. So and what I remember is we put it on the books, but I couldn't remember which books, so I was going back through JCPCs. It was really early that we did that. Yeah.
And there's money for the fire station as well. So the public works, there was a piece for fireworks and public works, and there was a piece for the fire department for the same type of thing, beginning design stages, early design stages.
So that was a question. And I think you answered all of my questions except for these unallocated, not yet spent down things, and we can talk about that next week. So I think it's 5 minutes of 5. So maybe we start with, I hate to keep Shannon, Jerry, and Mike waiting in the wings. So the only other thing I can say while we're filling in the time, I could often see if there's any public and take public comments early if
There's
there are
no
there,
public comment.
there is no attendees right now, so there won't be any.
May I ask that
Is
we start with possibly with Jerry because his is the Chromebooks, and I think Bridget was more interested in some other pieces.
Okay, Shannon, that makes sense. And then just so everyone knows, the next two meetings, we've finished with the projects. Next two meetings are starting to go through the other tables and what we're thinking about writing the report that we're pulling together. So if you have any questions that have not been sent to Sean about team things you've already heard, like I sent in, could the police live with one fewer vehicle? What was one question I had, and so we'll see whether we have any of those questions. So Shannon, that would be fine with me. So Jerry is here for Chromebooks.
Yes, Jerry is, sorry, just getting my camera on. Jerry is our director of IT, and we did have one of our capital requests was replace or because the sixth grade is moving into the middle school has a one-to-one model with Chromebooks. So we wanted to provide that consistency with the sixth graders. And so there is a request for the Chromebooks for the sixth grade, but Jerry could speak more to that as well.
Jerry, welcome. You'll have to unmute yourself, but we can see your box.
Well, I hope he's still here. I'll send him a quick text.
Okay. And Shannon, they don't have Chromebooks now in Fort River and Wildwood? They're using something else?
I believe Jerry can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's like they're not one-to-one, certainly. But there might be some sort of rotation or card or something of that sort that's used, but not a one-to-one model.
Jerry, welcome.
Sorry, I had to step out for a moment. What was the question?
So the question, Shannon briefly introduced Chromebooks. We haven't heard more about it, but my question was, do they have Chromebooks in the current elementary schools, the kids who are moving into the middle school?
Yes and no. So the Chestnut Academy presents a little bit different situation than we currently have at the elementary schools. At the elementary schools now, everything is cart based. Okay. So, and the cart shuffles around as, you know, the number of students in each classroom changes. At the secondary level, we have a one-to-one program where the students are issued a Chromebook when they enter 7th grade. And they have that Chromebook for, it could be as long as they're a student in the school district or whenever the model they got is due to be replaced. What we typically do is when, you know, the seniors graduate, we take their Chromebooks, bring them back down to the 7th grade. Now with the 6th grade coming here, they want to also follow that one-to-one model, which means we will be issuing Chromebooks to them that they could theoretically have for 7 years. So we're hoping to, you know, provide them with new machines so they're not using some of the older machines. And I could do show and tell, but I'm going to avoid that. With the huge stacks of Chromebooks we've had that have died through attrition and let's just say rough use. So it's not just the 6th grade academy that we're going to do. We're hoping to provide some replacements for some of those that we've lost through attrition. So the building project, let me see, according to the spreadsheet I was provided, they anticipate supplying 281 Chromebooks as part of the building project. Okay, of course, that figure was based on the average cost of Chromebooks when that number was created. If you follow the news at all, you'll see that memory prices and solid state storage, which uses memory chips also, have gone through the roof. They're easily, the cost for those items have doubled within the last couple of months because of the demand by the AI data centers. So I'm not sure what we're going to be looking at as we come to buy things in the next few months or even over the next year. I had a server I had priced up at $14,000. When I went to actually place the order, they raised the price $6,000. Okay, so I couldn't buy the server I was looking at. So yeah, so what I'm looking at between, I bought 120 Chromebooks in the fall. Those, I only have 21 left because of all the failed devices we've had. I have monies left in this current year's capital money, which I'm hoping to replace some additional Chromebooks before the year is out. And then this will help, you know, the money we're requesting now will provide the 6th grade and a few additional machines to kind of replace some of the other ones we've lost through attrition. Unfortunately, one of the batches that we bought of Chromebooks, we bought 379 of a certain model. And to this point, we've probably replaced 300 of them. The keyboards have failed, and they're continuing to fail. It's a defective device. They're out of warranty. They're not covering it anymore. And so we're trying to replace some of those as well.
That's a bad trap, Crockett.
You
I
know,
mean,
Chromebooks are I won't use cheap. They're inexpensive, and they're built inexpensively. So unfortunately, that's the kind of the life you get. We do buy them with 4-year warranties, which include accidental damage protection. So we are covered for at least 4 of the years. When Google originally released Chromebooks, they said, we'll support them for 5 years. After that, you don't get updates anymore. Then they were kind enough to extend it to 10 years. Great, these devices will not last 10 years. So.
Jill.
Hi, I have a couple questions. One, I just want to make sure that I heard you right on this one stat, because this is all very interesting. Did you say you purchased 120 last fall and now only have 20 left, or did I misunderstand that?
That's correct. In other words, I've had to replace 100 machines that have failed from last summer till now. At one school alone, when we do a sweep through all the schools and check every Chromebook in the summer, one school alone, we had 40 devices that we had to replace. Okay, so.
And this is separate from the keyboard issue. This is just
Yes.
General.
Yeah, it could be, you know, they're pretty beat up.
Yeah.
It could be dead batteries, broken screens we replace. That's a simple fix. We do that all in-house and stuff. So usually when there's a failure that we have to replace it, it's a much larger failure. It could be the main board, you know, kids unplugging and plugging the power cables. They beat those connectors up and snap them off and stuff. So eventually they're just unusable.
Hi, Bridget. Bridget, let me just check. So we're on Chromebooks right now.
Oh, perfect.
Any other questions?
I had a couple other questions. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, just keep going. Yeah.
So just the 281 number, is that, so that's not just for the 6th grade academy, that's including the 6th grade academy moving to 1-to-1 and then filling in other needs as well, is that right?
That number, when I put it in, would replace approximately 200 Chromebooks. Okay, the 6th grade academy, we're looking at right now 142 students, plus or minus. Okay, so there's more there to have some spares because things unfortunately break, so we need some spares, but also to replace some there. Now that was at $349 a unit. I don't know what we're going to be paying when we're, you know, in July.
So then this one last question, sorry, is just related to just the portion of that are for the sixth grade academy transition. I'm just wondering if you could, because I see that it's marked as I forget how it's worded, high importance or high priority. And I have questions, and this is probably not in maybe not in your area, but I have questions about how developmentally appropriate it is to give sixth graders their own device to be used that maybe, and that they may be in situations where they're more unsupervised with that device. But more so, I'm just wondering, this shift doesn't seem critical to me, though I understand wanting to have it be uniform. Everybody's in the same building, everybody uses the same model. But what's your perspective on what makes this high priority?
The high rate of attrition we've had for devices. We need to buy them, even if they don't take them home and they sit here in a cart. We just aren't, the devices we have aren't going to make it much longer. So we have enough between what the new building will allocate and what we already purchased this year. And I don't know if we bought any last year. I'd have to look again. But unfortunately, we've seen way too much attrition. The Hewlett Packards, we have 107 of those. And what we've been seeing is the cables that connect the screens are failing. So you move them and they start flickering and they fail. So it's sad, but that's just where we are. So we're just trying to make sure that they have the devices they need when they start in this building that are going to work. So we're not scrounging around and trying to find devices that work. We see this with the seventh grade. Once the devices come down from the seniors, first of all, not all seniors have devices, so we don't have enough often and have to buy more. But when they come down, they're typically in rough shape. So there's a lot of time spent either refurbishing, fixing, or anything else. So by starting them off with new equipment, we at least get them through their career here. As far as whether it's appropriate, in Amherst, we're a little different in that the middle school is 7th and 8th. Many districts, the middle school is 5 through 8. So they have devices, they're given devices at a younger age. Whether they take them home or not, I can't say.
Sorry, and just a very small point, just to clarify, you could presumably keep the cart model if you wanted to
Yes,
in the
but
sixth grade.
I defer to the school administrators, and they've said they want to do the one-to-one take home.
Yeah.
Part of this is not all of our students have access to technology in the home. So we're trying to make sure we try to keep things as level as possible. And it's also having a consistent device in school and at home.
Thanks, Jerry. I see Andy's hand is up. Andy.
Hi, Jerry. I just I guess this is sort of piggybacking on Jill's question, because if the sixth graders were staying in their original schools, they'd have a cart approach and they wouldn't be taking the things home, and presumably because they're moving to the middle school, does that mean that the teachers are going to be teaching in a different way, or is there some different expectation? Is there different curricular expectations now than there would be otherwise, or
I can't speak to that completely. I would imagine it's not going to be significantly different because their curriculum won't change. They still have the same requirements for sixth grade. Again, I discussed this with Mr. Rodriguez, which way he wanted to go with it, and this is his chosen model.
I mean, I get that you may still just need this number just to replace the existing ones at some point, but I'm just curious if that was.
They're going to need them whether they sit in a cart or they go back and forth.
They just potentially might last longer if they're in a cart, but who knows, right?
I have a quick
I'm not going to promise
quick answer.
Right. Bridget.
Quick answer, Andy, which is they're going to be switching between classrooms. like it's the first time they do that in the 6th grade. So they go to different classrooms, including that they'll be having their foreign language in the actual middle school. So they'll be rotating for that as well. So now you've got 3 different classrooms. So having them in a cart in one room isn't going to work as well as the one-to-one, even if at the end of the day they leave them in their homeroom, right? And don't take them home, which some students will probably decide to do.
Yeah, there's also, working in the library. I don't know how they're going to handle the specials here, but certain classes are on the first floor. And so they would be moving them around anyways between floors.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So is that Jerry's? I don't have the list in front of me, Shannon. So is that the Jerry's here for that one project?
Yes.
Yes. Then
if
you are welcome to stay, Jerry. So
It's fascinating, but yeah, I may stay a little.
So I'm going to give a brief overview of some of the capital projects that we requested. And Mike's here with me as well to help answer questions. So I'll just go through those, and there's a change that I want to talk about at the end as well. So one of our capital requests is for playground improvements at the Crocker Farm. We know that we're having 2 elementary schools, Amethyst Brook and Crocker Farm, and Amethyst Brook is going to be very new, very shiny. Everything's, brand new. We don't want to leave Crocker Farm in a state of despair and make those students feel inequitable compared to the other school that has all of these new things. So we want to, this summer, we're working on a lot of Crocker Farm projects that normally we cannot do during the summer because our summer programming happens there. But that's why the summer program is going to be at Wildwood just for this summer. So we can tend to some of the overdue capital needs that Crocker Farm needs. As part of that, we would like to do some playground improvements, and the zip line structure right now that is on the playground is a safety hazard and has to be removed. So we also have to build the retaining walls around that playground. There's some rotting timbers around the large play structure, and there's damaged slides that need to be replaced, and the storage shed is rotting and also needs to be replaced. And lastly, the asphalt basketball courts need to be repaved. So we're asking for $175,000 for those playground improvements. And we'd like to be able to do that. I think, well, Mike, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the hope is maybe this summer we'd be able to get that done along with the other projects, but I'll defer to you with that. We're also requesting funds for a special education van. We currently have a van that has over 200,000 miles on it and is 10 years old and is due for replacement. We're also asking funds for a maintenance vehicle. The vehicle that's being replaced is from 2007, and these are the ones that we use to plow the parking lots in the winter. And Sean had shared with me a spreadsheet of other capital projects that are on here, and I guess these are like standard ones that we kind of ask for every year. And it has to do with like HVAC management, ADA upgrades, and energy management, capital, furniture replacements, grounds improvements. So I was looking at these, and he asked me if we still needed some of these fundings, and some of them we do not, because we already have funding available, and I don't want to ask for something that we already have and want to use those funds first. So on that list that Sean provided, I would like to remove the energy management capital of $15,000, the copiers of $51,000, the HVAC improvements of $25,000, and the exterior and interior ADA upgrades for $30,000, and the exterior door for $10,000. And the reason why we're removing them is not because there isn't something to do with them, it's because we already have funds available that we'd like to use first. The 3 that were on this list that I would like to keep is the furniture replacement for 10,000, the grounds improvement for 25,000, and the school security for 10,000. And those are things that we don't have buckets for already that we do tend to ask for year over year, that of things that come up during the year that we don't have to use our operating budget, that we can use a capital fund for. And with the projects that I'd like to be removed, that was a total of 130,000. And there's a project that I'd like to do in place of that. And it has to do with Crocker Farm, and it also has to do with facilities. I would really like for us to have a consultant do a comprehensive study of Crocker Farm, what the facilities needs are, and focus on green energy and what would that plan look like to make Crocker Farm more self-sufficient. And what does it look like? What does that cost look like for out years? What is that plan? And really have that well developed by a consultant. And then the other piece that I would like uh, to seek funding for from the 130,000 that we removed is an operational review of our facilities department. And so basically our staffing efficiencies and how we deliver our services. So right now, if you're not aware, our drivers are also our maintenance workers. So that's great because they have a full-time job. Some drivers, are part-time. They drive in the morning and they have a time off in the middle of the day and then they go back to driving. But we had this model for some time and it is very efficient in terms of cost savings. You might perceive that way. And I think that's why it was intended. And you might be able to get more drivers because you're offering them a full-time job and not a part-time job. But we're finding we have a couple vacancies with drivers that we cannot fill the positions, which has created us having to contract out more for those positions. And we also have a significant amount of capital needs that we need to tend to. So Kathy, I know you mentioned projects that we haven't spent funding for yet. And what is our plan for that? Part of the reason why we can't get to it all is our maintenance crew is our drivers, and they're constantly being pulled away throughout the day. And so I'd like to have a study done of our staffing model and understanding our capital needs. And even though it might be more efficient to have the driver do the driving and the maintenance, I'd really like to see a study done as if we had a full-time maintenance crew and maybe the drivers were part-time, like what does that cost look like? But what does our long-term cost look like if we're able to actually get to the deferred maintenance because we have a full-time maintenance crew, and to have a deep dive analysis in this in a way that I don't believe it's something that I would be able to do. So I would like an outside consultant to assess this. And I think it will help us with just our maintenance, our costs long term, and coming up with a different strategy. And maybe we do this and it's really not efficient and it's not something we should do. But I think it's really worth having a deep dive to know 100% before we just brush it off without pursuing it. So between the Crocker Farm and this, I would like to use the 130,000 for a consultant to help with these two pieces. And that's my spiel. So Mike and I will take questions and go from there.
So let me just ask, I mean, you rattled off, I can remember the sheet a little bit, but I have a series of questions and I'm just going to wait for other people as well. And so I am also asking about the 3 years and older, Shannon, where when I added them up, there was about $1 million. So it's a question of can any of those be closed to bring some money in? So we can get to that next. So questions on what Shannon just did. That if you look at the spreadsheet, my question on a lot of those was if we're moving to one group of kids to a brand new school, and then we have Crocker, was furniture, HVAC, doors, windows, everything, were they all Crocker? And you've said kind of, I think they are all Crocker. They're not the new school. You know, you're not spending money on that. So now you just said furniture, grounds, and school security, keeping that, that's Crocker. Yes?
Right.
Okay, so that's specific to the Crocker building.
Yes, but I wouldn't want it to say specific to only Crocker because what if there is a need that wasn't accounted for that for the new building that we're not aware of yet? Like I, I guess we can be specific, but I would prefer not to be specific to the building just to allow us some flexibility.
Yep, because there will be costs for the new building. I mean, it'll be a new building, so our expectation will be anything that breaks and that is defective needs to be repaired and it'll be under a warranty. But some other costs will still exist. You know, things related to the grounds, things things sometimes happen. The plow hits a curb and damages it, or different situations like that that will probably require some money for the new building.
Okay. And just so people know, the new building gets new furniture too, and more was, my understanding is we ended up buying more and going to store some of it than the actual head count so that we're not short on furniture, but so the furniture, grounds, and school security. So are there, I don't want to jump in as chair. I'm going to wait and see if other people have, but I have several questions. So I'll wait to see if there are others. Bridget.
Yeah. Hi, Shannon, or maybe this is for Mike. Like, I'm just thinking about when you're doing the operational review, like, is that something that can take into account the things that aren't getting done and where the holes are, where the sort of gaps are? I think anyone who's been in the schools knows that we're having just so much deferred maintenance, and then over time that's costing us more over the long run. And I'm wondering, the consultant would do the staffing model, but would there be some of that other component too, to like figuring out like what could, I think this goes back to the thing everyone who knows me knows I love to say, which is, are we thinking of some way to invest capital wise? And I know your other project idea for the greening of Crocker Farm and some of that facility stuff works that way. But in which way will like this sort of investment help us to be more operationally efficient and cost effective?
Yeah, I think that is part of the goal. And I have not developed like a formal RFP for this, so there is still time to write and add to that if this funding is approved. But yes, I would agree with what you said.
Yeah, I think it would have to be a part of it.
Andy.
Shannon, do you have a sense of between the two projects that you're talking about, green energy and for Crocker and operational review, what the respective costs of those would be, or you just figure that they would add up to 130 and there might be some wiggle room?
Yeah, so I talked about this with Mike and Adam a little bit, and for Crocker Farm, we're thinking probably in the 50,000-60,000 range. For the other piece of it, probably in the 60,000-70,000. So if we had to separate those in two buckets, I could do that, or keep it in one bucket.
Yeah, that's a good segue to my question, Shannon. And then Sean can connect you with Bob Parent and Rob Mora. And Jeremiah. We did a building assessment of 10 buildings, 11 buildings. And my recollection is it was about 25,000 per building. They had a particular technology they were using, so it also could like look into the inside of the roof, not just look at top of the roof. And for some reason we did Wildwood, but we didn't do Crocker. So there's a price tag attached to something like what you're talking about for Crocker. So I just would like to get a little bit more information on that kind of a building assessment, what beyond what we did for each of the others. And Sean, I'm just remembering they said 25,000. I may be wrong on what that was, but that gave us something on every building, the fire
Yeah, I
stations.
asked
Yeah.
Jeremiah. You're right. I think he said it. Actually asked Rob. I think he said it was about 20 to 25. It also varies based on the size of the building. But I don't think that what that study did is exact. It doesn't do everything that Shannon's asking for too.
Right, because Shannon's asking also more, if you converted
Yeah.
the envelope related to the HVAC system.
Yeah, I think that what Shannon's
Yeah.
requesting relative, I think that's a good baseline. And then the additional pieces that the schools are looking to accomplish is, I think it's reasonable, the additional money that they're seeking.
Okay, then on the staffing efficiency, I'm not sure I completely understand. So when, for example, one of the things that I know hasn't happened that you got money for was the auditorium floor. Is that right in Crocker? There's some pieces that have sat there that were funded. We wouldn't normally do some of those projects with our own maintenance staff. I think we would contract for them. So I don't know how much of it is a shortage of maintenance people for the going through all those open projects. How much of it is no maintenance staff to do the work versus no procurement people to get a contract out for someone to do the work. So trying to understand the difference. And I don't know enough when Jeremiah in town is giving us facility. My sense is our maintenance people aren't doing a lot of that work themselves. They're contracting for it. That the staff itself is doing the more minor side, but they're not doing any major pieces. So that's what I'm not quite sure how staffing model gets you to getting the money you've requested spent on the projects you need to do. So I think every project that you asked for in the past, when it was talked about, they all made sense to me. So are they not getting done because of staff not there to do the procurement, get it from an idea to go out for bid, or is it actually humans would normally have done that work? Is that clear the way I've asked? How much of it is a staffing model versus facilities having the time to go out and get a bid to get the work done?
I think it's a combination of both. Some of the work, like bigger projects, like you mentioned, the Crocker Farm gym floor, that's not something that we would do ourselves. We would contract that work out. But other things traditionally, like, even like some of the Crocker Farm renovation work, as far as like zip line and the retaining wall, like other, medium-sized projects we could accomplish ourselves, but we don't have the personnel. So like non-specialized projects kind of are what we would be more able to handle ourselves.
And then when you originally proposed them, was the thought that you would have the staff to do them and we were just funding the supply cost, or were we funding that's why I'm not trying to get at, I always thought we were funding the additional staff to do the work, that I didn't think we were, and I'm talking about the big ticket items, not the, 5,000, or I guess we don't fund anything less than 10. Am I being clear on this? So when we're doing a roof, our staff doesn't do the roof. But if we're just doing patching of a roof, the staff might do it,
Yeah.
the difference between the two of those. So just trying to understand, Sean, because it interacts with my question of all these open projects that are 3 years old, or the schools added up to a lot of money. And is it sitting there because you don't have maintenance staff, or is it sitting there because you don't have people who can go out to procurement because you need someone to design it? And where is the bottleneck in getting that money from a good project to getting done? I don't understand. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like Mike said, I think it's a combination of both. However, I do just want to point out some of these older projects. They are for Fort River and Wildwood, and so they're specific to those school district or those school buildings. So knowing that they're closing, we have not invested in them because of that. So there is a decent chunk of that because of that.
Okay.
Mike, did you want to help respond to the remaining of that?
And some of it is also, we have maintenance specialists, and so we over the years we've struggled maintaining maintenance specialists. Like we used to have a plumber for the school district several years ago, and we no longer are meet the salary requirements to have a plumber to attract a plumber. Some of it is related to that, and yeah, some of it's not having the personnel. So just combination.
So, Sean, maybe I'm going to just follow up with you. If they can close some of those projects because they were specific to Fort River and Wildwood, so they really are not going to use that money, could any of that be shifted to what Shannon is now asking for on this in this budget? That's question number one. And question number two is if you need a maintenance specialist at a certain level, could you do a consulting contract for a couple years for a maintenance specialist to do this catch up and have it be called capital?
So let me start with your first question. So yes, and I mean, what Shannon's proposed basically keeps the school request level with what was already in the plan because she's lowering some of the other projects that were already in there. So I don't think you necessarily need the money from the closed out projects in order to fund what's being proposed. But the money, if those projects are closed out, it could go towards this or could go towards a supplemental appropriation for roads or something else in the future. And that's for all the projects, not just
Right.
it could be appropriate for other needs. So and then your second question, it can't be used for people. So if it was I guess we'd have to see what the structure looked like. I think assessments are fine. If it was like ongoing technical support, I'd have to think about it. It'd have to be with a company, a contract with a private company to do that. And I'd have to just kind of look at our plan and see if we've done something like
I'm
that.
asking because if part of the problem is you're not going to have the staffing in the operating budget, and you need it to do a catch up. So planning has come to us for consultants, for example. So it's people outside with a specialty. So that's my question on that.
Yeah. So what would be okay, Kathy? Because we've actually, thought about this, something similar. Like if the schools wanted to do a contract with an architect or an engineer to help them, a lot of the hard part and the challenge is creating the specs and this is for all projects, getting it from idea to specs to bidding, as you mentioned. So if an idea was to fund they call it like a house doctor contract with an architect where you go out for a competitive solicitation and you pick, hear from different designers and you pick one and then you give projects to them as they come up. I think we've actually done that in the past. I want to say that we did that with an architect maybe 10 years ago where we had a bunch of little projects and there were some engineering ones and there were some non-engineering ones. And we picked we picked a firm to do that. That might actually be where Gale came from, honestly. The architects who did the roof evaluation. I can't remember if that was how we first got introduced to them, but so that kind of thing I think would be okay from capital.
Okay. And then when I was thinking of closing out some of them, I did have a question, and it's shown on the sheet. You have the Crocker Playground being debt. So I was thinking if it wasn't debt, we can avoid taking on debt for that 175. So that was part of my thinking of, you had earlier said, trying to avoid debt as much as possible. So that was the one on the smaller level that you had listed as debt is the only way it made everything balance.
Yeah.
And so you got 75,000 back from Sean. So that could reduce that to 100. So I was looking, can we remove that one debt finance project. So that's just where I was going with thinking of moving the money around. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and maybe that would be when you talk about closing out projects and using it as a funding source, that might be a better consideration for the recommendation from the committee would be if any of those projects were closed out between the money coming back from IT and some funds coming back from older school projects, that might be able to pay for that Crocker Farm one, so we don't have to borrow for it. Because I agree with you, that's our goal is to try to minimize borrowing.
And that just means everyone knows that means more money for next year if we don't borrow, so the borrowing hits the following year. And so then on the staffing, the question Shannon has come up with is a new project called the staffing project, a staffing efficiency project. Can we fund that with capital money?
Yeah, we've done, I believe we did a compensation study for human resources once upon a time out of this. So studies, assessments, if you look at the definition of capital that this committee worked on several years ago, we kind of created an allowance for like consulting contracts that are defined, expensive, but they're kind of one-time defined expenses where you wouldn't want to build that into an operating budget because you'd have kind of a yo-yo effect where you increase it dramatically one year and then it would drop off the next year. So yeah, consulting, kind of sort of one-time consulting contracts like that.
Okay.
We've done that before.
And then the request that if possible, rather than having two separate ones with a dollar amount, Shannon was asking, she wants to do these two things under 130-ish. Can that kind of bundling and I'm just looking for guidance on if we like the idea, can we suggest it and is it okay to do it that way? Or do you need to keep it? They are distinct. They're quite different.
Right.
I think you'd go to different people, Shannon, for the two projects.
Yeah, I think, Shannon and I spoke about that too, and defer to Shannon. I think my preference would be to split them for tracking purposes. And Shannon and I can work together about what that split would be if that's what this committee recommends.
Okay. So then I think it would be helpful, Shannon, if you give us the piece of paper you were quickly reading off of, just give it to Sean and we can put it in the packet so that we have it for our own notes. So I wrote down the peep and we can watch the tape, but we're looking at a series of line items that are disappearing.
Oh, he has it in an email already. Sean,
okay.
Go back
Please don't give me that paper, Shannon. I don't know how to get that.
No, I don't piece of literally, a digital file so that when we write it in, we can have, we can be specifically mentioning what was on the original list.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Then if there are none, I just want to thank you for being very creative.
Oh, actually, I do have a question.
Okay.
So my question is, if we have these projects that aren't going to be spent because they were for Wildwood and Fort River, what is that process for us? What do we do? Is that just an email to Sean? Is that something that involves school committee? What do we?
Yeah, Shannon, if you just email me the like the project name and the amount that you see that can be closed out, then we can close them out, and I can give a report to this committee because we're probably gonna have some town projects that are going to be doing the same thing, so we can update the committee at either the next meeting or the meeting after that, how much has been closed out and what the balance is in our sort of closed out capital account.
Okay. And then my other question is, after this meeting, I heard you say there was 2 more meetings. Could you just briefly remind me of this process and when we find out?
Yeah, so we're an advisory committee to the town manager. So we're not decision makers, we're advisors. So we collect our thoughts and we look at, we've not had a lot of discussion about the out years at all. We've raised a few, it's a 5-year plan, so we focus just on the coming year. So then we write a report, and the report, if for example, every project that was proposed we thought was a great idea, we would be saying we thought they were all great and as originally proposed. that's not happened in the last multiple years. What's happened is some projects were removed off, the amount was changed, or in this case, we make a recommendation. So we make a recommendation to the town manager, and it is due before he puts together his capital plan. And meanwhile, since Sean is talking with Paul all the time, Sean, it's on its way to the town manager even as we're talking about it. So we will meet next Wednesday and the following Wednesday. And hopefully, if we are efficient, we'll be done by that March 20, whatever, the March 25th date. And we send that report to the town manager with a copy to the town council. So this goes directly to the town manager. And then he puts together a 5-year capital plan that comes to the council on May 1st, along with the rest of the budget. And I can't think of a time that it's been different than what came out of JCPC. Every once in a while, there was a disagreement on something, but for the most part, things changed along the way. Like Sean is already going to be changing some of the numbers when we see it next week. So the goal is we have to get to a balanced next year where the revenues match the expenses. We don't have to worry about it being unbalanced in out years, but we can comment on it. So that's the timeline on it. And the committee we collect our thoughts and we write a report.
Okay, thank you very much.
So I guess that's the short way of saying usually what we recommend happens, but you won't know. The council gets to vote on the capital, the town manager, then the council. And I don't think the only question we had last year on the capital plan, Sean, was why we didn't do a Crocker building assessment. Why did we do all the buildings except Crocker? We did Wildwood, but not Crocker. And we had questioned this amount for the financing package, but Paul decided to keep it in. We didn't take it out. We just questioned it, whether we should do it. So that's the process. So thank you. Thank you both very much. Just so people know, on extra technical support, we're having a school building committee meeting on Friday. And one of the issues is with the sophisticated HVAC system coming in the new school, does there need to be some extra support in the first year for the people who are running the system? And that's going to be a discussion at the committee. We have money in the larger project if we think that's a good idea. A lot of schools, to get to net zero, have discovered that they need how to make it work. And so that would be supplementing Mike's team during the first year of operation of the building. So that's going to be a discussion on Friday on whether we need that or not. Sean?
Oh, I just want to say, so just a reminder, next week we're back to 5 o'clock.
Yeah, we're back to 5.
And next week we have the resident capital requests. And so I've extended an invitation to all of the resident capital requesters that submitted non-road sidewalk projects. And I emailed all the road sidewalk projects and let them know that there's this transportation advisory committee being formed and that their project requests have been passed along to Public Works and that they'll make their way to the transportation committee. But all the non-road sidewalk projects, I'll put in your packet for next week. And I know at least one gentleman said he will be coming here to speak. I said they can speak for 3 to 5 minutes to their requests, and then this committee can decide. So right now there are no resident capital requests funded in the plan. So if there's any that this committee recommends, it would essentially need to help find the funding or identify the funding for it. But just those are kind of interesting too, because they're a little bit outside the box type projects that you don't typically get. So.
Okay, so we'll have that, and then you were going to bring us some updated tables as well.
Yep.
And if people have any project questions, they should get them to Sean before next week, because he's, providing answers to us. I'm going to see whether there is still no, the next item on the list is public comments. We have one member of the public in our attendees. So are we done as a committee before I open it up for public comments? Yes, it looks like it. So if the public would like to ask a question, please raise your hand. There are no public comments. I want to thank Mike, Shannon, and earlier Jerry for coming to us and also thinking out of the box into the future, which is, I thought, what we just heard, not just what do I need today, but what it was starting with what you were asking, Lee. Are we doing any planning here? Are we thinking about the future and how to make this work better, which I think we heard a lot from Shannon on that with these schools. So thank you for that. And I think we are adjourned. So I will make a motion to adjourn since we and the council are voting on adjournment, just to make sure we all agree. I move that we adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Okay. Lee,
Second.
Kathy, Kathy's a yes. Jean,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Bridget,
Yes.
Jill.
Yes.
We are adjourned at 5:46, which gives those of us who want to go downtown for the design standards time to get downtown. So thank you all very much. Thanks to everyone who participated. We are adjourned.